Hi everyone, welcome again. You've got myself, Paul, you've got Biraj, Daryl, Kevin and Kerry here to talk about challenges facing management post-COVID and as we all move forward and try and get the economy going again. Hope everyone's doing well tonight, this afternoon for you, Kevin. Good,
Yeah, very good.
all right. First topic we thought we'd touch on today is about how people are coming back to work. So many sectors of the economy around the world are nicely opening back up, and there's challenges. You've people that have been laid off, maybe some people that have been working remotely. The world's a little bit different now, and as employees return to work, sometimes maybe some people don't remember everything as they're supposed to be done. Maybe something's changed and they need some new training on a specific topic. So the question really is, post-COVID, as we return to work, who has the greater responsibility for training? Management or the employees themselves? We're going to discuss that for a few minutes and hopefully get a couple of different opinions going and see how it follows. So maybe to start off with, Daryl, do you think it should be an employee that takes the lead in their training or should it be their manager?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting one because the employees will have different situations. So I think in terms of their return to work, there's going to need to be a lot more flexibility in terms of the policies and processes that were in place beforehand. So I do believe that the employee, as they come back, they'll obviously understand what the process was beforehand. They will know how that can be adhered to with their current situation or their current mental approach to coming out of lockdown. So I do believe that it will be a balance. It will be a need for the employee to just outline areas where they don't feel comfortable or where they feel that they do need that support, as you said, Paul, in terms of additional training. And also it will need some input from the employers who may be looking to introduce additional processes, procedures to help them back.
I think that what you've just said at the very end is obviously key here, that there's going to be different ways of working. So maybe something does change and there is a need for a manager or a supervisor to provide some training. But what if it's just a case of going back into an office environment where nothing much has changed, but the person's been out of the office for 3-4 months and maybe unsure about things? Should a manager get involved there, or should an employee take the lead in dealing that with themselves? Biraj, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, I think a lot of this is context dependent. So the two schools of thought really. Firstly, you might have one school that says, we're talking about 3 to 4 months, right? Now, in some instances, that's a really long time. In some instances, actually not much will change within that time period. So I guess it's context dependent. For me, any decent organization, if there was something significant that had changed in that 3 to 4 month period, I would like to think that they at least would have reached out to their furloughed staff to let them know of any significant changes. But I think it's only natural, as you mentioned, when you're out of the system, so to speak, and we've all experienced it. We go on holiday for 2 weeks, we come back and you just forget that one password or whatever it is, because you're so autopilot on a day-to-day basis. When you go away and you're not doing that, it's only natural, I think, when people come back after 3 to 4 months, there are going to be things that they've forgotten. So I think it's important for an organization to not treat them like a brand new employee, but just consider the fact that there's probably going to be a very short-term ramp up that is going to be required. There is that kind of, when the kids go back to school, it takes them a week or so to get back into the routine. I think there's something similar to that where organizations are going to have to allow for those employees that have been off for a few months to get back into that flow. Whether that means specific training, I don't know, unless, as I said, something significant in the business has changed. But probably not, right? In 3 to 4 months, I'm not sure there's something that significant that's going to change that you're going to need complete new training on. So I think it's wise to allow for a ramp up period. That's probably only a week or possibly 2. But I do think it's probably the responsibility of both parties, really. I think that the organizations needs to be supportive of that ramp up. But at the same time, I think the employee also needs to show that willingness and eagerness to get back in and get stuck in from the beginning.
So can we just build a little bit, Baraj, on what you said there? You talked about a ramp up.
Yeah.
You know, how long's a ramp up? And, you know, if that's lower productivity, well, we ramp up, you know, that's money that's on the table because we're not making as many parts as what we should be, or we're not as efficient as what we should be. So what's reasonable for a manager to give an employee to get up to speed?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the type of role. If it's more of an administrative role, then it might just be getting used to those systems again. If it's you know, a sales type role and you know, there's product enhancements and things like that have happened, then you know, you might need to get to understand those enhancements over a longer period of time. Personally, I think, you know, if you've been at an organization for some time and you've taken a few months through furlough, then you know, a week or two is probably a good amount of time to be able to kind of get back up to speed. I wouldn't think it'd be any more than that, really. And if it was, then I think fundamentally there's been a lack of communication over that 4-month period somewhere, if someone needs more than a couple of weeks to get back up to speed and doing what they were doing before. That's my view anyway, yeah.
Or it could be, on that situation, it could be, you know, maybe there's a situation where the supply chain has changed. You know, some of your suppliers may have gone to the wall or are experiencing more difficulty, so you've had to change your operational approach to this, which may lead to you know, additional, I say, training. Everyone will learn at the same time, won't they? If it's a completely new supplier into your network, and then for a distribution team onwards, kind of thing. So it probably is different scenarios which we could probably cover, you know, a million times over. But you know, there will be situations here where certain things will have changed based on the situation of other businesses that are integral to your success.
Yeah, and I think on that point, Darryl, I don't think people should be afraid to come back to work and not know everything, and you know, acknowledge the fact that things have changed. And you know, you talk about clients and customers. You know, if you come back to work, you pick up the phone to your customer and say, look, I haven't been around for 4 months. That's not going to be a surprise to anyone, because you know, globally people are being furloughed and people are taking, or have been asked to take that time off. So I don't think there's any shame in picking up the phone to a customer and saying, I haven't been around for 4 months because I've been on furlough. Can we touch base and just, you know, have a discussion on what's happened over the last 4 months? And you know, it's a good way to, I think, just show some vulnerability and rawness in from a human perspective with your customers and clients, to say, look, you know what, it's tough times. I haven't been around. You guys have probably had a lot of change and uncertainty on your side as well. Let's just reconnect and see where everyone's at and take it from there.
Good point. So maybe, Kevin, maybe you could bring in a management view here. Is there some more responsibility on management to do some more checks to make sure things are being done safely and with the right quality in mind, or should we just go back to the standard processes that were always in place?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the particular area is. When it comes to just getting back into an office environment, and you know, like as people said, it's like going back to school. But I remember when I was going back to school after not seeing friends for 6 weeks, it was, you're going up to them, so how are you doing? You know, so there's that immediate closeness, which isn't quite going to be the case, as well as a ton of people. So I guess from that standpoint, every employer, in my view, and certainly as speaking as a lawyer, the onus is on them to take the initiative to ensure that everybody that goes back understands what they can and can't do within that. Now, there's going to be a learning curve, because you don't know it's analyzing humans, and we're not necessarily going to offices to do that, or into factories of how people are going to react. And for instance, I had a call today about something that's happened in my company, where you know, people are having to clock in and out, and it's usual that they queue up in that factory setting and clock in and then clock out at the appropriate time. But because of social distancing and the need to get onto the shift, we're having to make do with putting in new clocks elsewhere. But then you need to get IT involved, everybody's still working remotely on those sort of support functions. They've got to get involved, and you know, we've got multiple facilities all over the world. and just to logistically to do it. So mistakes happen because not people can't clock in, they can't clock out, but they do come into work and they do put in their shift, and then they get their paycheck and it isn't reflected. And that's a mistake on the company's part, but it's also partly because it's a learning process of we're trying to make these measures to keep people safe and we're training on that and they're following it. But then there's these little gaps that are coming up and then it's making tweaks. And as management, you have to deal with that. But then there are certain other things which I think, not from a legal perspective, but just a good management perspective, is why not use the opportunity to refresh your people on what they're doing, get them remotivated, reinvigorated for work, particularly if being on furlough. For those who haven't been on furlough but have been working from home, it may be slightly different, but it's still an opportunity that probably shouldn't be missed. It gives you that opportunity to communicate again in that setting of an office, and I think that's a good thing.
I like that comment of refreshing the training. You know, no one's above a little reminder, and coming back to work, even for the veteran that's been there and done it for many years, that reminder could help them and show them a different way. So I do think that's a good one.
It's actually things that are probably going to, sorry, quickly, just can add, just going on that, you know, coming out of being at home working, there are different techniques we've learned to use to work with our customers, our suppliers, our internal clients and external partners. And they might actually be worth sharing, particularly for those who have been on furlough and haven't been working, haven't had that experience. And, you know, there's a learning opportunity there, because just because you're in the office doesn't mean things were better or done the most efficiently. You know, I've actually found that I'm much more efficient working from home, but not everybody has, it's not going to be the same for everybody. So there's opportunities, I think.
Some learning points, and maybe doing some things a different way when you go back to the office. Yeah, important. So maybe, you know, Kerry, from a HR perspective, does the role of a HR manager or a director at a site change as people come back to work? You know, they've been very much involved with all the challenges of remote working and dealing with a lot of HR issues. Now employees come back. What should HR professionals do differently?
Well, I think they've been working very hard, the HR professionals, over the last few months, furloughing people, bringing people back, doing consultations, all sorts of things. My experience is that most businesses have closed. Obviously, there are certain sectors that have been badly hit, like the hospitality sector and theatres and things like that, where they're coming back from a standing start when they do come back. But a lot of our businesses have been open. It's just a number of people have been furloughed, another number of other people have been working, and now some of them are working part-time because they can do part-time furlough. It's quite a complex mix really across the small business sector. What I would say from a HR point of view is that we often are the conduit. So when you're talking about bringing people back and all these things about IT not working and all the rest of it, my view is that you should have probably a group. In a large business, I would pull people together. So I'd be pulling the IT, the facilities, the ops, the legal, all of these people together to say, right, what do we need to do to make this a smooth transition back to work? So it's not just on one person, on the HR department or the manager to deliver a smooth transition. So although the employer takes the majority of the responsibility, there are some responsibilities of the employee as well. But for the employer, there's things around health and safety. So when you're bringing them back to work, we're looking at risk assessments. We're looking at one-way traffic around a building, social distancing desks, facilities moving desks out. So instead of having 10 desks in the room, maybe we go down to 5 desks in the room or whatever it might be. And where are the filing cabinets? Where are the toilets? How do you make sure that things happen that means that the rules can be applied to whichever business you're in? So the government are providing the basic generic advice, and then it's up to us to then interpret that for each business and make sure that each business has the right plans in place. So through a team, maybe put a bit of a strategy and plan together. Don't forget, if we had some people on who have been on furloughed, other people are working and potentially their roles might have changed or their workloads might have changed. So therefore they're doing more things or different things. So there's a whole load of communication going on, number of our employers have not communicated very well to their people on furlough. So there's a whole load of anxiety and concern about people coming back because they really haven't had much communication. So effective communication, being transparent with your employees is really, really important. But on the employee point of view, they need to make sure that they voice those concerns. So when it comes to coming back to work, they need to ask questions. If they've got any personal issues around shielding, or they've got a sort of a relative at home that they're trying to protect, those are the kinds of discussions that have to be had. And also how they're going to deliver their role going forward, because going back to work isn't going to be normal. We're not going to be normal if we're talking about pre-COVID for a very long time. So there may be different ways of working that we need to look at going forward, and that may be built into a longer term plan. And they need to work with managers and their colleagues to make that work better. So teams might need to sit down together and say, right, how are we going to deliver these goals and objectives going forward? Because up until now, we've done it one way, but now we might have to do more remotely or online or whatever it might be, or speak to our customers in a different way, or deal with our products or the shop floor. The shop floor may be working, but the offices may not be, they may be dispersed. So there's a whole range of things, and I think it's better if you can do that with a group of people, bring them together with all the skills, and then you can work through that and then communicate and effectively with your teams and your staffs to make sure they know exactly what's going to happen if they are coming back from furlough, or if they are working, what's going to change about their role so that they can do things differently but support the business until things are more back to normal, as it were.
I think on the point of that sort of that tiger team, return to work team that you're referring to, I think also a really important point there is that organisations should get people from across all levels of the organisation involved in that as well. Like not just the executive team that get together across all the functions to figure out what it's going to be, because there's going to be different struggles across different layers of the organisation, and so having that kind of cross-functional and cross hierarchy view, I think is really important as well. So I hope that businesses do take that into consideration, because someone that is a graduate, for example, will have a different set of challenges to an executive when it comes to working from home, equipment, time, all that kind of stuff. So I think I love the idea of that tiger team, but I think that tiger team should be a across the organisation.
And don't forget, there's a lot of support out there with industry networks. So I know in North America, the North American Manufacturing Association puts out a lot of guidelines, a lot of support. And then trade unions. In many sites, there's a trade union, and a trade union can really help when you're in these situations of getting feedback from their employees, helping management understand, creating that team to work together. So really good discussion there. I think in conclusion, the question was, who's really responsible as people come back to work for the retraining and the re-onboarding? Is it managers? Is it employees? This panel say it's a joint responsibility. There's certain things that management have to take the lead on, for example, health and safety. We heard from Kerry talking about the layout and how people have to walk in certain directions and follow certain rules. That's not up for debate. There's other aspects where the employee has to come forward and put their hands up and say, hey, I need a little bit of help. I'm not sure about this. Can you help me? And their management's responsibility to create that environment where people are comfortable doing that. But at the end of the day, the employee does the job. They need some help somewhere and they're not sure on something. They can ask their peers. They can ask their supervisor. They can do it themselves. But at the end of the day, the employee has to come forward with their concerns. Well, I hope you enjoyed that 10-15 minute discussion. Really appreciate you taking the time to connect with us, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.